everyone, I'm Elaine Chow.
And I'm Trist Curlis.
And welcome to the Musician's Loop.
Loop, like a drum loop?
No, like the kind of thing that a jeweler uses to evaluate gems.
Oh, like a magnifying glass, like what we'll do on this podcast, actively listening to music like a musician.
That's right. And every week, we are choosing a track to dive into together and share our thoughts about what we find intriguing about the song.
Whether it's songwriting, chord progression, instrumentation, recording technology, arrangement, whatever, we're looking at the music we love through the lens, or the loop, of decades in the music industry.
Hey, Trist, what do we have this week?
Well, I'm surprised it didn't lead this way between the two of us loving a cappella and being involved in a cappella groups so much. This could very easily be just an a cappella podcast, but it is not. However, today, while it is, I think, maybe the fourth or fifth a cappella selection we have, it's the first one that just doesn't sound like it. I suppose our friends from Cuba, vocal sampling, didn't really sound like it quite a bit, but this is a further departure from what we think of when we think of a cappella. And this is really, I say this all the time, but one of my favorite groups. This is ARORA.
Okay.
And their song, Worst Thing I Could Do.
All right. I'm really looking forward to this. So before we get settled down and pause for a moment, can you remind us how we're listening to music as a part of the Musician's Loop community?
Especially this week because of the recording excellence that happens in this recording. I highly recommend and strongly encourage that you take the time to reposition, readjust, move to the better room with the better speakers, with the better headphones, whatever it takes to make your listening situation as good as you can make it. Take the time, give yourself that treat. You bought something really expensive that sounds really great, but it's not easy to use every day. So take the time to do that if you can. We like to encourage such things. If you're out on a walk, you're in some place you can't do that, we're still thrilled to have you. We're still thrilled that you'll listen to us at all. Anyway, please do make it better if you can. If not, enjoy regardless.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and leave the links in the show notes, and we will be right back. And we are back. All right. I will guarantee this is one of my favorite songs. I was looking at my Apple Music statistics, and it looked like I have played it at least 195 times. And so I am not exaggerating when I say that I have listened to this a lot. That being said, I want to give a little bit of history from my perspective. And I actually dug back into our history as friends. And there's a post that you made just to your friends on Facebook in July of 2013 that said, buy this now. Yeah, 2013. Buy this now. Thank me later. Seriously, why haven't you clicked on the link yet? Don't you trust me? Would I lead you astray? Click and buy already. Geesh. Okay. You really don't need to thank me at all. Now or later, just get this. And it was a link to this album. And I bought the album. And it quickly became one of my favorite albums. So I'm so glad you chose this one. And just to say that our relationship goes way, way back to music recommendation. And I'd say that this is probably the first one that I purchased sight unseen, without any kind of expectation that it was going to be great, and it was awesome. So I did want to say that this album became one of the soundtracks of me being an author. It was one of those albums that really got me into the zone, and so that's part of the reason I've listened to it so much. But that being said, this was a time that I was able to listen to it very closely because, we're doing this as a part of a community, so reevaluating it, kind of like the Patsy Cline one where it was so familiar that it was almost like, oh, I can sing all the parts. But this was an opportunity for me to stop and really analyze it in the way that we do on this podcast. So with all of that rambling and all of that raving, I wanted to start by asking you, why did you choose this song? And also, why did you choose this song of all of the great tracks that there are on Bioluminescence, which is the name of this album?
Yeah, I can't really necessarily say why, because I could easily just have went random on the whole thing, and any song could have been like, oh yeah, this one's great. We could talk about this one. This one's great. We could talk about this. There are many candidates, as you mentioned. By the way, I'm thrilled that a post like that's when you read that, that sounded just like something I would say about something that I enjoyed so much that I wanted to not just to be, hey, check this out, it's cool. Like I wanted to really dig and like, no, 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 you don't understand. You really will like this. I can almost guarantee it. Everyone has their own likes, but boy, this thing is so good. It's like, who's your favorite child? It's like, oh, I like it all. So it's hard to really pick, but I always just liked the chord changes in this. I liked the groove. I liked the sounds. I love the little half chorus. I love the half chorus that gets paid off. When you finally hear the rest of it, you're like, oh, that's so cool when you hear the rest of it. Christopher, the main, in my brain at least, while all talented and lovely and incredibly contributing to this, the brain trust, the mastermind, the man behind the curtain, Christopher Harrison, who sings the lead on this, is also the one that spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours at his computer mixing and flipping this stuff around and taking their voices and making them sound like beautiful voices and sound like not voices at all. As I mentioned, all the audio you hear does come from voices, but all processed and distorted and mixed in such a way to just get the sounds that they really want. I love his voice on this. I like the writing. Did I hit any of the important parts yet about why I chose this one? I just do.
Well, let's break this up into a couple of different areas and we'll end on the lyrics. But I did want to start out with some of the effects that we heard on this because uh, I would say that this is an interesting one. This is one of those areas where my brain really goes electronica because of the
Mm-hmm.
way that the voices are processed, even though it is a cappella. And I think that there is a lot in there that we can really consider. Now, one thing I didn't hear, and I was listening pretty hard for it, it didn't sound like anything was auto-tuned, right? Because a cappella singers in particular, they are just so precise in general with their voices. There were a lot of things where you heard where it was just a very human sound. You could just hear that it wasn't auto-tuned, but there was a lot of processing on the voices. So can you tell me a little bit about what types of things you heard or that you guessed might have been applied to the voices?
Well, related to that, my best guess, I don't know. I probably should have done a little interview with Christopher myself. Part of what I was saying about Christopher being so good at this is my best guess is there's a lot of tuning, and the main point is it doesn't sound like it. So when you say that, I take it as it doesn't sound like the sound that I usually hear when there's a lot of tuning. So, along with the fact that there is a lot of processing and the sound they're going for, very intentionally supposed to be kind of an instrumental, synthesizer-y sound, their voice, even if it's kind of tuned, doesn't have that metallic-y edge to it like it would if it were literally against an acoustic guitar part instead. I don't know those things to be true, but that's my guesses from what I know of mixing and effects of this type and the way that he does things. But your point stands absolutely. It doesn't sound like super robotic tuned singing. But
Right.
my
And then when
best guess
I
is that it's against the electronic effects. It doesn't seem unnatural sounding, which is what
Yeah, and I think what I was trying to get, when we think about auto tuning, we're thinking about that one track from Cher, Do You Believe in Life After Love, where it sounds very sliced. It was a large part of the entire style of that song was like this over auto tuned. I will say that in my own music, I do tune my own voice, but I always tune it so that it sounds like I could have sung it. I'm not eliminating that kind of thing. I just think stylistically, it wasn't what we would consider like a very overprocessed electronic vocal sound.
right. Totally. I love the almost watery intro. I thought of that word, like just those really blurred, ethereal voices at the beginning. Kind
Yeah,
of sounds like
and
some reverse vocals.
mm,
He's just so good at the different textures. And then where his voice lands in the mix is just right out in front of it all. It's so good.
yeah, I also wrote down the word ethereal,
Mm.
and I was like, it doesn't even sound like voices. When you said watery, I was like almost underwater. So a very
Yep.
similar kind of vibe there that I got from it. One of the interesting things that I thought about the rhythm, and I only caught it this time, it starts out in a very funky kind of rhythm, but then it ended up in almost this 1950s double clap thing
Mhm.
where it had that syncopation, but it also had that
Sure.
double clap feel. And I don't know why I didn't catch it until now. Maybe it's because we've been listening to all sorts of contemporary eras. I've really been thinking about the rhythms that come in different parts of it. And so this 1950s era kind of, duh, 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 duh,
Yep,
that's what I
it's
heard
true.
in this one, which I thought was interesting because it didn't sound that 1950s to me, right? It was just like this particular bouncy rhythm was a large part the heartbeat of the song.
That's cool. I hadn't ever really thought about that when you mention it that way. It's like, oh yeah, that's totally from that. But because all of the sounds and the vibes and the chords and everything else around it is not of that time, I didn't even think of it that way. That's cool how you extrapolated that out of that feel, but it's very much that boom, pop, 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 boom, pop, pop, pop. It's totally the backbone of a lot of that, even though there's all this other stuff happening around it that isn't in that feel or style. It's really cool.
Another thing I heard was how the effects really serve to underscore the rhythm. And a good example of this is in the bridge where there was actually slicing. It's kind of like you were singing through a fan, like the
Hmm.
voices would cut in and out rhythmically. It was right in beat with the rest of the thing, even though the voices were being sliced to
Right,
maintain the sense of rhythm.
right.
And so I just felt like the effects were really supporting that sense of ongoing rhythm. And one thing I really appreciated about the instrumentation and the way that the arrangement worked is how often it just dropped to the rhythm part, like the beatboxing,
Yeah.
and just one or two voices.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became full again, and then it like dropped down. And so you got this wide variety in a genre that tends not to have a whole lot of dynamics. I think of electronica as like mostly layering. It's like you're layering voices, you're layering
Right.
sounds, and then you're
That's how
taking
they
them
achieve.
away.
That's how they achieve the dynamics is via textures.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I felt like these textures were even more extreme than your typical electronica sound,
Sure.
where it was just always like dropping you into something kind of new so that
Yeah.
it was never really repetitive.
Indeed. Yeah. It's so well done. And I know we only do songs on here, but this is two of us encouraging folks to listen to the whole album if you can, just to hear the variety of things. Some of these same comments could go to just about any of the tracks. It's like, ooh, I love how they masterfully did this. And the thing is, at a time when maybe there had been other albums that had done this a bit in terms of really digging into effects, really digging into disguising the voices. But for me, no of those voices that I like this much together as a group, and maybe not quite as much of maybe the songwriting not as good. There's another group, Spiral Mouth, before this, and actually Gabe, who was in that band, helped produce some of their stuff early on. This group, ARORA. So there's some ties to that. This is definitely not a first of anything, but it's the one that is stuck. And within the a cappella community, to this day, you'll find people rave and rave and rave about this and be like, yeah, we haven't had an album as good as that one yet. Yeah, I would encourage folks to check it out. I've always thought from the time I heard it that if someone took these same songs, that's what I was trying to get to. The songs are so good. The songs are so well written. It's such a great collection of songs that a producer just takes these songs and produces them with actual sequencers and instruments, bands, singers, etc. Could also make an amazing album. It's not because it's a cappella that makes it cool. It's just an extra cherry on top that it's all voices, I think.
I agree with you there. And I could go on about Spiral Mouth for a while, but I think that they really were going for the grunge rock kind of sound, whereas Aurora was really going for this electronica kind of sound. And so I just felt like it was different, right?
Sure.
Both of
Right,
them
right,
were
right.
good.
Right.
Um,
Speaking mostly in terms of just using effects,
that's right.
getting manipulating the voices away from just normal vocal sounds.
So let's switch over to talking about the lyrics because I agree with you. This was also a very well written song. I would love to hear like your first take on this, and I can go very deep into these lyrics because they were pretty interesting to me.
We often get my first take on this, so I want your first take on this,
Ah, man.
Elaine.
Okay. So, first of all, I think I've already led with the thought that it is an amazingly written song. This song describes a toxic relationship like they're spiraling near the end of a relationship, but they really are spiraling. They seem to be in stasis in this toxic relationship. And the lead singer is in this intimate relationship. They're constantly bickering. They're constantly digging pieces out of one another. And it describes this relationship, but it doesn't have a resolution. And actually, one of the things I thought was interesting was that the song really doesn't have a resolution either. It just ends on a 5.
Yep.
Is it the 5? I can't.
Sure. I don't know. I don't remember.
It doesn't end on the 1. And so it ends with a cliffhanger and you're like, but what happens next? And I think that's a big part of how the music and the song fits together. So we hear that I'm not in love. I'm just too weak to give you up. Like there's a sense of they're stuck and I never learned from my mistakes. And at the same time, the singer recognizes that he is a part of the system. He's like, I'm indulging you. And then there's a lot of this blame language, like, why is it what you said if it's not what you meant?
Right.
And there's also this whole thing, like the partner isn't healthy either. You hear about ill intentions, this push and pull. So there's this sense of just, we are going nowhere and you're the worst thing I could do. You're the worst choice that I could make. And yet here I am making it.
And here we are, right?
Yeah, exactly. But going into the bridge, we've talked about bridges here before. And one of the things that we always say is that the bridge is really that moment of revelation, right? Where we find out something about how this person views the world. What is the moment of truth in there? And it really is that the other person is hurting as much as he is. And we find out about your broken will won't change your heart or stop the bleeding. It's like, even though you're digging pieces out of me, it's not going to stop you from hurting as much as you do. And so I just felt like it was a very poignant song from that perspective. And we've talked about tragedy before. This is a different type of tragedy. It's a tragedy of two people hurting each other. And from this person's perspective, a way out hasn't been found yet.
Yeah, so good. I already mentioned it, but the things that I like lyrically and then production-wise, while you're in the bridge at the beginning of that, the sum of all your dark remarks I find misleading is a great line. And the fact that the tone very much covers it and the melody is doubled an octave lower. The sum of, it's just like, just the way that it goes and with the octave double underneath, it's just perfect choice, Chris. Perfect choice. I guess in subsequent listens, it's enjoyable because I know that it's like kind of a tease, the little half choruses before. That first chorus is really just half of the chorus. And then when you get to it the second time, the amount that you got before, you kind of think that's it. And then even the way the chord progression is like, okay, we're going on and it moves on is so rewarding to me every time I hear it. I don't even know that the first time I heard it, I could say I was, cognizant of that thing. But upon multiple listens, it's like, oh, that's so clever. That's so cool that it just cuts short right there and then continues on later. I love those particular choices in the craft of this songwriting.
I wrote down, and that like half chorus that you were talking about, there's a hold, there's like a pregnant pause. And then there's something that kind of sounds like a zipper. It just like, it just, shoop,
I think that sounds like a match lighting to me.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
Which torching the relationship, etc. sounds.
Oh, that's
I hear
great.
what you mean, though. There's a sound,
yeah.
a nondescript sound, obviously, since I thought it was a match and you thought it was a zipper. So it was supposed to not be exactly noticeable, exactly recognizable, then mission accomplished.
Well, I also appreciated where at the end of the verses, at the end of the chorus, there's generally this breakdown where it just went to the rhythm and just one or two voices singing this interlude that led into the next piece. And so I think that brought into the sense of like big and medium and very, very small. Oh, one other thing that I heard that I thought was interesting was in the bridge, there's this high angelic voice that overlays it, introduces it.
Yeah.
And it's just floated on top.
Yep.
It is a sense of here's where the truth is. Here's the sunbeam in the midst of this darkness.
Yeah.
And it was gorgeous. It was this beautiful, not even operatic. It was just like a very floaty voice at the very top. One of the sopranos just floating this note on top. And I just felt like it was a good juxtaposition to the tone of the entire song.
I remember that as multiple voices, but you're right. There's like just that floating, the voices up top while the The underneath melodies, it's so good. Why don't we get done with this? I'm listening to this again. It's so good.
Well, definitely one of our favorite songs. So thank you for introducing it. Any final words before we wrap up?
If I were to say one thing, I would say, buy this now. Thank me later. Seriously, why haven't you bought this yet? Don't you trust me? Would I lead you astray? Buy this already. You don't need to thank me at all, now or later. Just get this.
Thank you, Trist. From my 2013 self, 200 listens later.
That's what I would say.
All right. So with that, let's move on to our next segment, which is
Mailbag. Mailbag.
the mailbag. And you can reach out to us at themusiciansloop@gmail.com. That's LOUPE, or via Threads or Instagram at The Musicians Loop.
And that is the place where you can let us know what you thought about this song, or if you've listened to this album, or if you liked a different song on the album, or what you thought about this production of this one, or what your favorite is, or really any of the songs, any thoughts you have about the production, the lyrics, maybe that we didn't touch on, that you picked up from listening to it. That is where you can tell us your thoughts. We'd appreciate it.
All right. So this week's mailbag is once again from Threads. It is from Elizabeth Melkins from April of 2026. And she writes, in 2004, a close friend had 30% of one song on a hit country album. It was not a radio single. She made six figures. In 2015, together, we had 40% of a song that went to number 29 on the Billboard Country chart as a radio single. We each made 5,000-ish as writers. To be fair, it got us a publishing deal, which we lost after the song didn't go top 10. And that's how much digital streaming services changed the songwriting world in just a decade.
Ah, yes, that is true. In the way that the stuff has changed, as we've talked about a bit before, moving to streaming, and the way that the pie is split is definitely different. There are some things in the system that I think still need some adjusting and correcting, but a lot of it is just, unfortunately, we're living in the change, and so many people lived in an old way, in a weird, blunt, almost rude way to say to this. I mean, they're not even really necessarily complaining about it. They're just stating this is how much it's changed. It's easy to read this and think that she's maybe complaining about it. She isn't necessarily. There's a little inference like, oh, it used to be cooler. To me, that's the thing that I think gets missed. It's like, yes, this is totally true. It's not necessarily a good or bad thing. It's just your luck ran out.
It's descriptive, right, of what
your
the
luck
industry...
ran out. Like, oh, I had a song that was on an album that had a hit on it. I made money because someone else's song was a hit, is what it used to be, because you just sold the whole albums and you used to have to buy the whole album. So as long as I could get placed on the same album, yeah, I might still make a little bit less than the person with the hit, because there would be some singles and some airplay. But largely the income would be from the sales of the whole album that had a hit that I didn't write.
Yeah, so let's back up a little bit and talk about how songwriters in particular were compensated previous to the streaming era. And I think one of the things we haven't talked about, because we talk so much about performing here, we talk about full-time musicians being indie, etc., but we really haven't talked as much about the music industry and about how things were for songwriters in particular previously, and then what is like today. And I think that you've kind of hinted at some of this, but I would love to hear a little bit more about what you know.
From what I understand, that's what we were just talking about. This post is a great choice because it really does outline it. She said in 2004, a friend had 30% of one song on a hit country album. It didn't say her friend's song was a hit. It could have been the least liked. There's no way to really take a poll, because it's not like now where you can see the streaming numbers.
Yeah.
You can't magically know, of all the CDs we sold, which song got listened to the least. You just know what songs were hits.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that it has changed is, as a songwriter, you were just dying to be on the album of a big artist. Sure, of course you want the hit. You would love for your song to be the one that takes off. But kind of the secondary thing, well, sure, it'd be great if the hit was my song, but if I'm on the same album as another hit song or two, it's just going to move just as many units. You're selling all those CDs with the one song that everyone wanted to buy that was kind of a racket that happened for a long time with, sure, you could buy some singles, but that wasn't really promoted. If you really wanted to hear that song, a lot of times you paid the whole $15, $16 for the one song. And so that's some of the glory of streaming to the consumer now. Oh, I just want that one song I want to listen to. I don't want to listen to a whole group of songs by them. That's changed a bit. But yeah, she's outlining it perfectly. Is it used to be, hey, as long as I could get on an album that was a hit album that had a hit song on it, great. Now it's like, okay, well, our song wasn't as big and people didn't listen to it because they don't buy the whole album anymore. They just go to the stream and they play the one song that they want to hear, and it gets all the streams and the whatever revenue is from it, not ours. So yeah, to me, instead of, oh man, that's not cool, it changed. It's like, well, no, it just changed. Sorry. You used to be really lucky that you got money from being on an album of someone else's success, but now you don't. I wish it were different.
It's interesting to think about this from a couple of different angles. Like, first of all, certainly from the songwriter's perspective, I can see where they benefited from some albums that have strong songs, some albums that might have had weaker songs, or just songs that are less discovered. And I think that's part of my own journey as a listener as well, just not to get trapped into what I would call like the curated radio culture that we have nowadays, that there is a number of different algorithms that drive a lot of our listening. And so when you and I first started playing this game, I think I referred to this during our separate introduction episode. You and I started talking about music, and you were like, do you want songs? Like, what do you want? And I ended up deciding on albums. I wanted to listen to entire albums. And part of it was that I felt like there was a certain artistry of listening to the lesser known pieces, of listening to the entirety of the album, because it is an art form separate from the individual song. So I feel like in some ways in this curated culture, we may be losing out on finding something that we really like that might have been considered a B-side. It might have been considered one of these throwaway songs on an album. And I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. And certainly as a music listening advocate now, because now that we have a podcast, I'm an advocate, right? My encouragement is for people to listen to the entire album. If you like one song, then listen to the entire album and see if you like more songs off of that album. And I think that would maybe address not entirely what Elizabeth is mentioning here, but I think that in some ways our listening habits drive what is happening to the rest of the industry. The people who might still be up and coming, for people who might be just trying to make their living writing music, how can we listen a little bit, I don't want to say less discriminately, but like, how do we listen more broadly so that we might be able to discover something that we might not have imagined that we would have liked, I guess is where
Mm-hmm.
I want to go.
One of the best ways that I discover songs that I like now, for those who don't know, I have a pretty extensive collection of just music, CDs, vinyl, hard drives, etc. I will, as much as possible, either in an old iPod or in some way that I can gather a lot of files, I will gather entire albums, thousands of albums worth of music, and I'll use some kind of shuffle function. So I'm often discovering music that I own already. I own the music, but because I got it for one song, or I only liked these certain things about it, there's gems hidden in some albums that I haven't listened to in forever. Even at the house, all of my stuff is kind of burned into a big home server hard drive, so I'll kind of try to use a randomization shuffle on that during the day if I'm cleaning the house or whatever. And most of the time I'll find something that surprises me. Something will catch my ear. I'm like, what is that? And I'll look at it. It's like, oh yeah, that album that I never really listened to, or I only listened to this one song from it. So I find myself trying to do that as much as possible to find the hidden gems in the stuff that I already own before I even get to the fact of just finding a streamer and letting it go and just letting it feed me new things that I might not have heard, which of course I also enjoy. But it's like I have thousands of recordings that I don't necessarily know all of them. So I try to learn and find the gems within.
I also think that personal recommendation is something that is really powerful. And I've certainly found it very powerful for my own listening practice. For those of you who don't know, Trist recommends basically all of my music for me. And my deal to myself is I have to buy what he tells me to buy, and I have to listen to what he tells me to listen to. And I find my own horizons being opened by just that practice. Asking someone who knows me and knows my listening is learning what I like. It's like the ultimate mixtape experience. And I think that's a big part of this podcast as well, is we're hoping that you will be able to discover types of music that you have never listened to, never considered listening to, and finding something that you actually enjoy through this experience of participating in the Musicians Loop community.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads us right into the thought that if you have the same experience and you want someone to listen to this and you'd like to share the experience of learning about these songs, you can send them a link to one of these podcasts, but you could also send the information on to a friend about the playlists we have on all the same places that we're available. We have playlists, so you can look down the playlist. Maybe your friend just listens to the playlist and then they find a song that they like, and then they want to find out more information, and then they can listen to our episode about it. So we would love you to share us that way.
100%. And so with that, any final thoughts before we wrap up for the week?
That's it. Just to reiterate, man, just one of my top albums of the last 20 years, regardless of style or type. It's definitely way, 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 way up there. So check all of those out. And Elaine mentioned it earlier. If you haven't, make sure you listen to the little bonus episode where you do get to learn a little bit more about us. I think that one might get skipped a lot because it's just not a quote unquote real episode, and maybe should be first, but that's not how we did it. We did it later. You can still listen to it and find out more about who we are and why we say what we say. It might not answer those questions, but maybe you'll get closer.
Awesome. Okay, so with that, we're going to wrap up. Have a great week, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot.